I have been making games for over 8 years at this point, and in that time I have made plenty of mistakes that have either wasted hours of my time in fixing or just doomed a project altogether. So in this video I wanted to go over what these mistakes are and hopefully help you guys avoid making these same mistakes that I do. So right from the jump, you've got this amazing idea for a game that's going to make you millions, and you start by creating a new project in your engine of choice. But the biggest mistake that you can make from day one is by trying to build your game too quickly. If you're making a top-down shooter and try to get the player input, movement, attacking, enemies, weapons all in the game as fast as you possibly can, you're going to hit a brick wall pretty quickly. Game ideas can change. In fact, they pretty much should change from their initial concept, because not everything works like it does in your head. And it's important to fully grasp what it is that you aim to achieve each time that you open the engine. So just take a deep breath, open something like Millernote, a Google Doc, or just get a pen and paper, write down every object that's needed, design a simple class diagram, and only after that's done, you should start writing the code out. What I find works the best for me when designing a game is by just grabbing a notebook and writing out lists or short descriptions of everything I am working on. This helps me identify what needs to be included in each class before I even start programming, and by doing so, I can reduce the amount of rewriting I have to do every time I want to include a new feature. In my game ZCab, all of the attacking was handled by raycasts, but then I wanted to include new weapon types that use projectiles instead. This meant that I had to refactor my code to support various firing types, but that was easy because of the way I had structured and planned my code. All it took was moving the existing raycast function to a new class, writing the projectile class, and calling a generic function in the weapon controller. This implementation took me about 5 minutes in total, and essentially no code was removed or replaced. It was just a case of separating it into new classes. And that is thanks to the fact I actually took a minute to plan out my code in such a way that if I did want to change it, I could.
Mamma mia!
Now, you've been developing this project for a while. The codebase is getting pretty big, and you may find that some parts are too convoluted to work on again, and that's all thanks to the wonders of spaghetti code. Games don't have to have perfectly clean and fluid programming. Getting something to work is obviously more important, but it's good to find the right balance in this mess. Once you have hit a certain milestone in the development, where every feature you've implemented is at a working level, I would highly recommend taking the time to just think it over and look for things in the code where you may have duplicate functions that could be simplified. Some classes may have access to data they just don't need, or there's a specific function that is using up too many resources and needs to be optimized. This is where the tools that some engines offer come in handy. The profiler tools in Unity and Unreal, for example, show you the exact performance of every aspect of your game. And if one is causing spikes that would be noticeable to the player, then you should look to see how you can reduce the workload caused by the offender or spread it out in such a way that the impact from the function is no longer visible. One thing I definitely have an issue with is over-focusing on tiny details that most people won't notice. I find this is especially true when making pixel art or 3D models. Nothing in the world is perfect. An apple isn't perfectly round. A tree doesn't grow straight up. They have variance in their shapes and sizes. There'll be bends and curves that won't line up on a grid. Yet when I find myself designing artwork for my games, I always catch myself trying to make things perfect. I've been redesigning these sprites for the visual effects in my game ZCab to better suit the art style, which are for a flamethrower and an ancient tome. Yet I always find myself using symmetrical shapes and ensuring that each side is even, when in reality, it should be more chaotic and all over the place. It doesn't matter if one pixel on the left side is slightly different to one on the right side. It's supposed to be like that. And it's the same when I work in Blender making 3D models. I always find myself trying to snap everything to the grid and make sure the sides are even and edges are all the same length, when in reality, all that matters is if it looks okay at a glance. you would not be able to tell if one leg on a chair was ever so slightly longer in a game, or if an object was off center by a pixel. So why do I care about these things? It really is frustrating, but I've always liked working with mathematics and numbers, so that's why I keep trying to translate that into artwork, which doesn't always benefit me. So this issue is more for people with a brain like mine, but if you ever find yourself getting too deep in the details like this, just zoom out, have a look at how it would be in the game, and see if it even matters at all. You can save yourself a whole lot of time by doing this. Setting yourself a deadline or just a vague time frame is something that's really important in game development, because it forces you to focus on the important parts of a game instead of being too bogged down in those details like I just mentioned. But you need to be realistic with yourself when you set these expectations. Do you really think that you can get the game done in your given time frame? Games take a very long time to make, even the most simple ones, because there's always features that people overlook when thinking about the game. Take Flappy Bird for example. It's a super simple game that you'll see plenty of people try to remake on YouTube in a single day, hour, 10 minutes, whatever time frame they give. But that's just a slice of the gameplay. Once you reach that stage of development, you might think that it's over at that point. However, you then have to consider the tutorial pop-ups, the high scores, the ability to share scores, creating a menu, and including the advertising platform so the developer can make money. Then you have to ensure that everything works as intended, there are no glaring issues, and it's not just on your device. It's important to test on a wide range of devices that support your game. So my advice to you would be to say that however long you think it'll take to make a game, aim to reach the gameplay stage in that time, and then add 50% more for polishing, testing, and making it the best game it could possibly be. And this next issue is something that I struggle with the most. I have spent countless hours developing all of these projects, but when it comes to releasing them, I've barely got anything to show for it. Out of the 100 or so projects that I have so eagerly started, with every intention to release to the world, I have only created a handful of demos and one game that I would consider half finished. So why do I do this to myself? If I spend so much time on a project, surely there's something there to release. This is just one of those mistakes that most solo developers are going to make, because it's just human nature. Well, at least that's what my brain tells me. Every time I get so far into a project, it starts to become less and less exciting to work on, even though I'm still enjoying the progress that I'm making. I can look at my collection of abandoned projects and still see something good in them that I think could be turned into a game that people would enjoy playing. I just can't bring myself to do it. You hear a lot of indie developers talk about this issue, and it basically boils down to the fact you're not good at motivating yourself to complete a project, because it's harder than starting a new one. And for me personally, every so often I'll hit these lulls where I have no energy or focus to work on something, and I can either wait it out, take a break and come back fresh, or I can start a new project and find that motivation straight away. It's a really weird thing my brain does, but I'm always trying to find ways around it, to trick myself into working through it, even if it's just completing a few small tasks every now and then. And that would be my biggest advice to anyone that also deals with this issue. If you have a game that feels stagnant and you don't fancy working on it, just try to find something really small that won't change the game much, but it's enough to get you back into the project. For my game ZCab, I sort of hit this issue a bit when working on the shop and the weapons, as they're one of the largest parts of the game. So instead, I just started designing some gardens and decorations for the map, which by itself is a really small task and I can get it done pretty quickly, but it still impacts the game's quality by making these little improvements. But don't worry about ZCab's development, it's going really well and you should see a new video about it very soon. I've been working on some really great things. But anyway, those are just some of the mistakes I always make when developing games. Hopefully, just by identifying them, they can help you on your game dev journey. Let me know down in the comments below what issues you deal with when making games and how you get over them. Be great to read those. And don't forget, as always, to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.